Last week's epic finish to the Advent Health 400 brought up an interesting point, and that is what is considered Rubbin Is Racin. Kyle Larson door slammed Chris Buescher twice and went on to win, and some fans were upset with this move. I, for one, love the idea of contact in racing, since this is what stock car racing is all about. We are not Formula One where contact results in penalties. This isn't the first time where a finish has been decided by a move like this. The most notorious NASCAR finish before this was the 2003 Darlington finish. Both drivers were beating and banging to the finish line, so why do some fans praise this move, but not the one Larson made? Another recent example of door checking coming to the finish line was Ryan Blaney at Talladega in 2020 when he walled Eric Jones coming to the finish line. All bets are off and anything goes in my opinion. But of course, throughout history, we have seen fans indifferent about the actual meaning of Rubbin Is Racin versus dirty driving. In this video, I'm going to present examples which I believe all fall under the category of Rubbin Is Racin, and then explain my reasoning on why each of them are different amongst fans. So where is the consistency in this saying? Year after year, we see finishes or moves being made that could very well be considered Rubbin Is Racin. Personally, I believe that it should apply to the best opportunity you have to one-up your opponent on track. I also believe that this move should be more intense based off the number of laps left or the stakes of the situation. Let's look at a more recent example. Last year at Pocono, Denny Hamlin ran Kyle Larson wide in turn 1, and this caused Larson to hit the wall. Now, Denny drifted up the track, but he didn't cut his wheel straight into the 5's door to try to wreck him. Kyle Larson does have the option to lift in this scenario, but he chose to hold it wide open and continued into the wall. We have seen Larson make similar moves on drivers, one being the exact same move on Bubba Wallace at Las Vegas, and the other not as similar, but still made a move on his teammate Chase Elliott at Watkins Glen late in a race. Now, of course, fans hated Hamlin for this move, as he is probably the most hated driver in the sport currently, but does it make the move any worse than just Rubbin Is Racin? Personally, I look at the Pocono incident as another case of Rubbin Is Racin. This could very well have been the final restart of the race, and Denny Hamlin made his move to win the race. The stakes and intensity are higher, so the move is more drastic. But again, he didn't crash the 5 out of the race. He put him in an uncomfortable position to either lift and race it out, or hold it wide open and hit the wall. But the option was there, just like Larson did to Bubba in 2022. Let's look at another example of inconsistency amongst fans when it comes to Rubbin Is Racin. In the closing laps of the 2020 Bristol Spring Race, we would see Chase Elliott attempt to pass Joey Logano, and he ended up walling Logano and himself in the process. Fans at the time were okay with this move, as Chase Elliott is a fan favorite and Joey Logano is not. But then when the roles were reversed a year later in the 2021 Bristol Night Race, and Elliott was on the receiving end of it, fans were in an uproar at Kevin Harvick, who got into Chase Elliott. But the thing of it is that Elliott ran Harvick tight in the corner, and Harvick did a similar move to what Elliott did to Logano in the previous year. He lost his car due to tight racing and had to chase it up the track. Contact occurred, and this ended Elliott's chances at winning that night. He then proceeded to manipulate the race by blocking Kevin Harvick so Kyle Larson could win. So now with these two scenarios, what makes them different amongst fans? I'll tell you what it is. It's the favoritism towards one driver over another. Both scenarios were caused by tight racing on a short track in the closing laps, which results in a Rubbin Is Racin moment. I just talked about favoritism towards one driver, and I want to double down on that with these next two examples. Here we see Carl Edwards move Kyle Busch for a win at Richmond in 2016, and then Kevin Harvick moved Kyle Busch at New Hampshire in 2018, also for a win. Both of these moves were celebrated at the time because Kyle Busch was hated back then. The driver who is more popular and likable in a situation that involves Rubbin Is Racin is going to have the most support towards who is right in the situation. Now, if we look at the 2018 Chicagoland finish, we see an entire lap of beating and banging to the checkered flag where Kyle Larson initiates contact on Kyle Busch. He failed the slider and put him in the wall. Busch repaid the favor in the following set of corners. Fans were upset as Kyle Busch dumped Kyle Larson to win, but he gave back what Larson gave him. This is probably one of the perfect examples of Rubbin Is Racin, as we don't have to compare moves by drivers years later or races later. We see in one lap how it should go down. One guy hits another and then vice versa. Another great example of Rubbin Is Racin is the ending of the 2021 Xfinity Series Bristol race. AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric beat doors for the final 2 laps, swapping the lead back and forth and using each other up. Cindric would try to wreck Allmendinger coming to the finish but failed, and Allmendinger would go on to win the regular season championship and the race. The stakes were high for this race because, like I just mentioned, this was to decide the regular season championship. Personally, I believe what happened between the two of them was fair, but if the roles were reversed and Cindric had won, would the fans have liked this finish as much as they did when AJ Allmendinger won? How about when a championship is on the line? Daniel Hemrick roughed up Austin Cindric in the final corner at Phoenix to win the Xfinity Series championship in 2021. Like I previously mentioned, when the stakes are high, you do what you have to do to position yourself ahead of your opponent, because your opponent would sometimes do the same thing back to you. And is that considered Rubbin Is Racin? I believe so. So why do some fans feel so indifferent on Rubbin Is Racin moves? Well, for starters, there isn't a clear-cut definition in the rulebook that states this amount of contact dictates it. I believe that the issue is simply fan favoritism, and it's a little worse from very toxic fans of one driver or an organization. Some fans seem to have short-term memory, as some of their favorite drivers have done similar moves in other races, and even previous drivers who are idolized did these moves back then, and it was considered okay. The best way to simply understand if the move that was made was dirty is to think, would I have done the same thing if the stakes were just as high? There is a reason why most of the drivers who are involved in these moments are multi-time race winners and champions. It's because they take what they can when it's necessary, just like the old saying goes, nice guys finish last, and well, there are some drivers in the past who may have raced clean all their career, but in the end, they didn't win a championship, and they might not have had a lot of wins, but they could have if they took what they needed at the time. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What would you guys define Rubbin Is Racin as? If you were to put an exact definition in the rulebook, how would you word it? I appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.